The desert morning had barely opened its eyes when the sky cracked with a sound so unnatural that every heartbeat in the camp seemed to freeze mid-thump. The world, which just seconds ago was steeped in the peaceful hum of distant engines and the murmured rustle of soldiers preparing for another long patrol, suddenly felt like it had tilted off its axis. It was one of those moments when instinct moves faster than thought, when the body acts before the mind can ask why, and when the courage buried deep inside a single human soul rises to the surface like a tidal wave. In that terrible, blinding moment, before the dust cloud could shape itself into meaning, before the screams could catch up to reality, she moved, fast, fearless, and without hesitation. And that was the moment everything changed. That was the moment she became the shield her squad never saw coming. Sergeant Amelia Hayes had always been quiet in a way that made others underestimate her, quiet in a way that concealed entire oceans of strength beneath the still surface. She was the kind of soldier who listened more than she spoke, who calculated risks others walked past blindly, who carried a calmness that felt like a shelter. Her squad loved her for it, though they teased her endlessly for her silence. They were 6 in total: Ramos, Carter, Jensen, Malik, Torres, and Amelia, the kind of family you don't choose but end up trusting more than your own blood. They were deployed deep into an unforgiving region where the mountains hid danger like secrets and every sunrise felt borrowed. Their mission was simple on paper but deadly in practice: secure a route that insurgents repeatedly sabotaged, ambushes unpredictable and explosions sudden as lightning. The morning patrol had begun with the usual wait, the uneasy mix of routine and risk. Amelia walked near the front as always, eyes sharp, step steady, scanning the ground with that instinctive awareness the squad relied on. There was something about her presence that gave them confidence. Even without words, she had a way of telling the squad when to tighten formation, when to slow down, when to trust her gut. She didn't need to say much. Her actions spoke in a language only soldiers understood. Then came the warning. A flash. A glint. A tiny, deceptive flicker beneath the sand. It might have been nothing. It might have been everything. But Amelia saw it half a second before the world erupted. The explosion didn't start with fire, it started with silence, the kind of silence so dense it feels like a scream trapped inside the earth. Then came the violent tremor, the upward punch of pressure, the sudden swallowing roar of dust and debris. Time collapsed into chaos. But in that flicker of half-a-second instinct, before the others even processed the danger, Amelia threw herself forward, not away from the blast, but toward it. Toward the threat. Toward the one direction no one sane would run. Her leap was not graceful. It was desperate, raw, and powered by a fierce devotion that allowed no hesitation. She hit the ground hard, her body slamming into the buried charge with enough weight to trigger it prematurely, divert it, smother its deadly reach. The explosion ripped through the sand in an upward burst, but her body redirected the force, absorbing the shockwave that would have torn through the squad behind her. The blast engulfed her in a cloud of dust and fire, her silhouette disappearing in an instant. The rest of the team was thrown back, but alive. When the dust settled, the squad scrambled, coughing, ears ringing, vision blurred. They shouted her name, searching frantically for her figure in the swirling haze. It took precious seconds before they found her, crumpled, half-buried, her uniform burned, her breath shallow. But she was alive. Broken, bleeding, but alive. And because of her, so were they. The medevac felt impossibly far away. Hours stretched like lifetimes as they waited for the chopper, surrounding her with trembling hands and guilt-soaked silence. Ramos kept muttering that she shouldn't have been at the front. Carter kept begging her to stay awake. Torres held her hand like a terrified brother refusing to let go. Malik stared at the sky, whispering prayers he hadn't said in years. And Jensen, tough, unshakable Jensen, had tears tracing the dirt on his cheeks. Amelia drifted in and out of consciousness, barely aware of her surroundings, but even in her pain she worried more about them than herself. She tried to speak once but couldn't, her voice swallowed by agony. She didn't need to say anything, though. They already knew why she'd done it. She had always been willing to take the hit if it meant others walked away. She had always carried the invisible weight of responsibility no one asked her to bear. The hospital tent smelled of antiseptic, dust, and fear. Days passed in slow motion as she fought her way back from the edge. Surgeons did what they could, patching, stitching, repairing. Her body had taken the brunt of the blast, shrapnel embedded deep, burns carved into her skin, fractures splintering bone. But her will to survive was the kind that made doctors shake their heads in amazement. She wasn't just a soldier. She was a fighter in the most human, most vulnerable sense. Her squad visited daily, each carrying guilt heavier than their gear. They would sit by her bed, recounting memories, cracking jokes to mask pain, arguing over who owed who dinner when they got home. They told her she was a hero. They told her she saved their lives. But Amelia always shook her head. She didn't care about titles. She didn't care about medals. She cared about them, her squad, her brothers, her mission. She did what any soldier with a heart like hers would do. Recovery was slow. Pain was constant. Some days she felt strong, others she crumbled under the weight of frustration. There were nights she woke in a panic, startled by phantom explosions, her breath jagged and eyes wet. But every morning she reminded herself she was still here. Still breathing. Still fighting. And she had something worth fighting for, not glory, not recognition, but the 6 lives she saved without a word. Months later, when she returned to base, she didn't expect a welcome. But what she got stopped her cold. Hundreds of soldiers stood lining the walkway, boots planted firmly, hands raised in a solemn salute. They didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They honored her the way true warriors honor sacrifice, with silence, respect, and the weight of unspoken gratitude. Her squad stood at the front, their eyes bright, their pride unmistakable. Amelia fought the impulse to cry. She had never felt extraordinary. But standing there, surrounded by people whose lives were shaped by the choices soldiers make every day, she understood something profound. Heroes aren't the ones who seek the spotlight. Heroes are the ones who act when others freeze, who jump when others hesitate, who risk everything for reasons no words can fully express. Her story spread across the ranks like wildfire, not because she bragged, but because her silence spoke louder than speeches ever could. Soldiers whispered her name in hallways with reverence. New recruits heard about her sacrifice during training. Commanders used her example to teach what courage looks like when it's stripped of glory and laid bare to the bone. Years later, long after the scars faded but never truly disappeared, Amelia sometimes found herself staring at the sunrise. She no longer saw danger hiding in the light. Instead, she saw the fragile beauty of life, the gift she nearly lost, the lives she saved, and the purpose she discovered in the heart of chaos. She had no regrets. Not one. Because some stories aren't about surviving for yourself. They're about surviving so others can live. Some leaps aren't meant to be remembered as acts of bravery. They're acts of love. And she would jump again, every time. If this story touched your heart, if Amelia's courage reminded you of the quiet heroes in your own life, please consider supporting this video. Your engagement helps us keep sharing stories that matter. Special request: before you continue, comment below and tell us which moment in Amelia's journey moved you the most.